Thanks so much for joining me here on the Mark Divine Show. I'm super stoked to have you, and it's nice to see you again, as we were talking about a moment ago.
Great to be here. Great to be here. Thanks for having
Yeah.
me.
Oh yeah, it's my pleasure. And like I said, just for the listeners, I actually met Dr. Issels years ago, around 2003 or four, when I was dealing with some allergy issue, and a friend of mine introduced me, and we went up to Santa Barbara to his clinic, and it was quite impressive what you were doing back then already with curing cancer and all sorts of immune deficiency. And basically, after assessing me, you said, you know what, you're dehydrated. Drink some water, no charge. I was like, that was actually the best advice I've gotten in a long time, because a lot of things can be solved when you're hydrated properly, right? I mean,
Correct.
isn't it
Yeah.
true that a lot of issues come from dehydration, because then your body gets really acidic and bad things start to happen, right?
Well, yeah. If you cannot, just think about the body being like a city, and it runs out of water.
Yeah,
What happens to to a city if there's no sewer?
it's not good.
Everything's going to back up. And the
Yeah,
same thing with the body. If you don't get rid of the sewage, it's going to build up, and you're going to get problems. You're going to have rats. You're going to have pestilence, disease, and everything.
rats.
So
Imagine rats running around the inside of your body. That's pretty funny.
yeah, it's kind of a bad image, but that's part of it. Again, the job as a doctor is to make sure the body functions correctly. And
Right.
once you do that, anything else that doesn't clear up by itself needs a little bit of help. And that's where I
Okay.
come in.
Yeah. Well, I'm looking forward to digging into that, because it's so far off from what mainstream medicine is, trying to do. But that's a whole different subject, or maybe we can touch on that. But before we get into kind of your work, I recall that you had you're operating in the I wouldn't want to say shadow, but in the long legacy of your father's work in Germany. So can you talk us about that origin story? What was his experience? Was his work accepted, or was he kind of sidelined? And how did you kind of start here in America and following in his footsteps a bit?
So that's an interesting story. He started his treatment of cancer patients by accident in 1951, and actually he was a GP practitioner, and he was doing really well with using natural therapies and working on the whole body principle. And somebody told me, I have this friend of ours, she has breast cancer, and she's not responding to the chemotherapy. Just give it a try. And he treated her. She improved somewhat. Unfortunately, she died, but that kind of got him going. Okay, this is actually working. The whole body approach does work for cancer. Because back then it was just figured out. You're just going to do chemotherapy, cut it out, and then hopefully they will respond. If they don't, they will die.
Right.
And again, that system still holds true now, and that was 70 plus years ago.
Right.
And then he got more involved, and developed a protocol. The idea is that the immune system is your best friend, and you support the immune system, and then eliminate what he called the causal factors. It's basically the issues why you got sick in the first place. Remove those, and then give the body the right nutrition, and then the body will heal itself. Because he believed, as well as I believe, is that the immune system in the body, the body heals itself. When you look at antibiotics, you take those just to keep the infection at bay. So until the immune system has a chance to produce antibodies against the infection, and the immune system kills it off. But antibiotics just are bacteriostatic. They do not really stop infection per se, but they can give the body time to heal itself or to address the infection. And then back to that, he started that, and then that progressed, and then in 55, he opened up the first clinic for terminal cancer patients in Germany. And of course, because he was so excited how his process is working, he was very outspoken about it.
Right.
And he made a lot of people angry.
Right.
And then in 1960, he actually got arrested for treating cancer patients in Germany.
That's what I was thought, because I remember you telling the story. I heard that story that yeah, it was just too.
They had like 10 counts again, because he supposedly have told people they shouldn't get surgery, and that's why they died. And he was against anti-establishment. He went to it took him 5 years to clear his name, but he was spoken innocent by the judges there in Germany. And he started, he kept working till he was about till 1975. Then he retired again short term, opened up a clinic again in 1980, did another 10 years. And then he retired again, but he still couldn't sit still. And then in 95, He actually went to a clinic in Mexico. Showed them the program. That's how we got involved in Mexico right now. And I was the first clinic in the U.S. In 2004. I opened up the clinic there.
So how did it come that you started working for him? Were you always interested in that?
Well, no, I was trying, not really, because I was trying, because when I was growing up, I mean, everything we did was discussing cancer. Every dinner, he discussed cases with, what he's doing, how the patients were doing. So I was around it all the time. He explained his thinking behind how he's addressing issues, how he's looking at patient care. And so I was just overwhelmed by it. So I said, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to totally avoid this. And then, then after a while, I got back to it, and I said, okay, I might as well do it because it's in my blood, and I think I'm pretty good at it. And so, yeah, it was very easy because, I was raised around the thinking of, the holistic thinking that the body knows how to heal itself.
Right.
And our job is to get rid of the problems, why it's not healing, get rid of the obstacles to cure.
Right.
And, like you said, water, not water, it's an obstacle to cure. Because basically you're not getting rid of the toxins.
Mm-hmm. So you talk a lot about, and you mentioned it a few times already, immunotherapy. So that's treating the immune system. So, and also you talk about it needing a holistic or an integrative approach, which makes a lot of sense.
Right.
So let's just talk about what those two things mean. What is an integrated approach? Obviously multidimensional, whole person.
Right.
But let's talk specifics, and then when it comes to immunotherapy, like you've been through a lot of trial and error, and there's probably a lot of people here listening who are like, yeah, I'm curious, like, what do we do if I have cancer, or even if I've got allergies or an autoimmune deficiency, and maybe there are different protocols. I don't know.
So the principle, again, in general with cancer patients, the immune system is not broken, it's just unfocused. Mm-hmm. So, like in other cases, when people, if they have no immune system, they'd be dead right away by infections. When people are, they're not dying. So basically, the immune system is working, except it's not working the way it should. It's unfocused. It's not going where it needs to go. So there's a reason why it's doing what it's doing. It's the reason why it's focused on X versus on Y. Right. And so our goal is that find out, number one, why is it focused on the wrong area, by doing some testing. Secondly, it's important to make sure it's activated right away so it does its job to help the cancer patient. And that's why we use cell therapies. Cell therapies are basically use natural killer cells, which are the ones that destroy tumors. We use T cells. Again, they're the ones that destroy cancer cells. Then we use dendritic cells, which actually are the generals. And they guide the cells where they go. We take those cells out of your body, activate them, and going to a process, which is actually it's a cell separator where it crosses a certain membrane, but some other agents to make the cells looking for antigens. They pick the antigens up against the cancer, and then they grow out and re-inject it, and they fight the cancer pretty aggressively with no side effects. And then the next part is addressing the why. Why did you have this? I mean, what caused this? Is it a chronic viral infection? Is it related to stress in your life? Is it diet? Is it, EMFs, toxic exposures? They all play a role. And so we need to know what it is, because we just don't want to go and say, well, cancer is a disease of X, let's just treat X. But every case is so unique. You may have the same diagnosis, but the reason why you have it could be totally different. So we need to know, okay, you do have the virus. Or, for example, Epstein virus is a common one I see with cancer patients. Then I see a lot of, EMFs being an issue as well. Geopathics, for example, is a part. Dental issues, chronic infections. Additionally, all these are part of, why the body doesn't work correctly. And then, of course, poor nutrition. Mm-hmm. And, when you get older, you're not absorbing as well. So you have to make sure that the nutrition you take in actually gets into your body to do its job. Make sure you absorb it correctly. And that's usually the first step. Digestion, number one, because that feeds everything. If you don't have proper digestion, no matter what you do, the body won't really heal it, because it can't, because it doesn't have this substance to do that, the substrate.
Wow. So there's a lot of factors trying to understand the why, I imagine. So you have to go through.
That's not going to be a one-shot cure. Never will be. It's too complex.
Yeah, and very personalized. It's going to be different for every individual, right?
Right. It is.
So there's a lot of ways we could take this, but how does one have the best chance of not having to show up with cancer at your clinic, but
Well,
maybe being able to say, I've caught something early, or I have a predisposition, so catch them earlier.
Well, anytime you can avoid, getting a disease, it's going, is beneficial, smart.
Of course, yeah.
But again, if you look at lifestyle, low stress, if you can have low stress in your life, don't get exposed to a lot of EMFs like cell phones, which is almost unavoidable now. Don't get vaccinations because they are
I want
very
to
dangerous.
double click on both of those when you're done here. So those two I'm curious about.
Okay.
But,
And that's a big one. Of course, hydration is there.
Yeah.
I mean, the biggest toxic exposure is probably, I think some people don't agree with me. I think carbohydrates are very, very dangerous.
yeah.
And
There's too much sugar, too much glucose.
it's sugar is inflammatory. So cancer is actually a disease of chronic inflammation.
Right.
I mean, all diseases are inflammation related.
Right.
So cancer is one of them. So you don't want to increase the inflammation level.
Yeah.
And also when you have too much sugar, you reduce immune function as well. You reduce, you have microcirculation decreases, things like that.
Right.
So you don't have a good surveillance system to get where it needs to go. And it does.
So
low sugar feeds cancer cells.
To eliminate sugar and simple carbohydrates, like, do you have a specific nutritional recommendation, or is it really just personalized?
I think. I mean, I've been studying this quite a bit over the last, and I've been changing my mind quite a bit. I was going this, low carb diet. Then a new thing is called carnivore diet. I think that's pretty interesting as well. But I think that the best diet is the one you can stay on long term.
Right.
The concern I have is anytime I change your diet, and if that's not something you do long term, if you stop it again, you're back into square one. So basically, you go back to the problem as before, because people, they're not compliant long term if there's something they don't want to do. Yeah. So
I agree with you. My when I work with my clients, I say let's not follow a diet, but let's follow some principles. So here's some principles, right?
Correct.
As close to the earth as possible.
Correct.
Right. If you're going to eat carbohydrates, it's going to be complex carbohydrates from vegetables and a little bit of fruit, and then you're going to get a high quality protein and a lot of fat. And so you can call that kind of paleo keto diet if you want. Call it what you want. It doesn't matter. But then intermittent fast and fast mimic. Intermittent fast every day.
That's
mimic.
good.
Yeah.
I mean, I have one thing. I tell patients, anything in a box or anything in a can, don't eat.
Yeah, I say if it comes with a barcode, probably stay away.
Don't eat it. I mean, that's, again, you're not getting good quality of food. And secondly, it's a very silly thing to say, but if you have a loaf of bread and you lift it up and it bends on both sides, don't eat it because there's not enough fiber in there to really support it. So basically, that's going to be pure sugar. I mean, these are the things people can actually see. Okay, I lift the box. Yeah, not good. Can't, no good. Bread bending, not good. Okay, I know what I can avoid. Yeah. Anytime you eat anything that's freshly, anything that's fresh is of course better. I mean, they did studies where they looked at, vitamins given who are plant derived, the vitamins, derived in a laboratory. They work, the ones plant derived, they're more efficient, they're more effective because the energy is different. Right. There's the bonds and the molecules have energy and it comes from somewhere. And if it comes from the sun, this could be better for you than it comes from, a Bunsen burner.
Right, and it's going to be better than if it comes from a cow or a chicken even, because there's toxins in that meat. And also, the animals, particularly the cows, trap the emotions of their horrific death in the meat, which is, again, it's a little out of the scope of this, but science will one day understand that's not healthy.
Energy is everything. Energy is everything.
That's right.
Because when you look at when people discuss disease, it's said dis-ease. Basically, it's a disease of function.
Right.
And back, that's what they call, now it's called illness. But then there was disease. Basically, the organ was not at ease. That's why you were sick. So get back to a healthy state, you know, would get rid of the dis-ease and make it easy again. So
I like that. What about cooked food, like vegetables versus raw? Aren't you getting a lot more of the nutrients when it's raw?
depends on the vegetable. You know, for example, they say, you know, tomatoes, for example, you know, they're better when they're cooked. You know, and for asparagus, for example, it's, you know, if it's not cooked, it's hard to get some nutrition out of it. You know, you want to steam it, you don't want to boil it.
Right.
You know, because you want to break down, you know, the fiber, so you can actually get the nutrition, you know, out of the vegetable. You know, green beans I'm not sure, I don't like them that much because they have some toxins in them as well. If you eat too many beans. But basically anything you can eat steamed is fine. You know, nothing boiled to death. And nothing that you put in, you know, like, you know, a pot roast is not good. It's
you mentioned
destroyed food.
Yeah, so nutrition is huge, but also, you know, hyperarousal and also sleep deprivation seem to me two of the major causes of disease today, right? Do you see that in a lot of your patients?
Yeah, I mean, most, you know, commonly I've seen patients, you know, do have a stressful event about 5 years prior to diagnosis. So they have something, you know, they lose a business, or, you know, lose a loved one, or they go in for a divorce, and maybe even 5 years, they usually get some kind of chronic disease. Right. And, you know, I mean, if you constantly stress, it's, you know, when you cortisol levels are elevated, you know, you cannot absorb, and you cannot heal. Because when you're running from the tiger, the body doesn't want to do anything but, you know, have muscle power, just so you can run. And so the whole process of absorption is just, you know, it's not going to be effective. So again, whatever you eat in that moment in time, you're not going to get all the benefit from that food. Right. And in our society, you know, you have stress driving in the car, you know, going to the office. You have stress, you know,
a lot of time pressure, stress.
Yeah. Too. So it's all. I mean, the quality of life is so different now. It's really funny. I lived in Fiji for a year before I you know, got started in medicine. And I remember going from Fiji, flying to Maui. And Maui, I said to myself, my God, this place is stressful. How can people live here? So it's because the level of stress there to there, it was, I mean, you think about Maui, man, this is lax, you know, I'm really enjoying myself here. But I thought, man, that was stressful. All the traffic and all that stuff in Maui, it was just like, how can people do it?
That's pretty funny. I can see that. I've been to Maui a number of times.
Wow, how is that possible?
Well, and all this stress elevates the cortisol, which then makes sleep hard. And so it's a vicious cycle, right? You get excess cortisol, then you can't sleep, which then you don't have the energy to exercise, and then you're making poor nutritional choices. And you kind of this downward spiral. So you say it takes about 5 years for major cancer or some sort of symptoms to show up generally.
Well, you know, depending on your genetics too. I mean, some people have more weaknesses and they're easier broke down than other people. Some people can have a lot of reserves, some people have none. You know, that's basically, you know, you look at the family history of the patient, and if there's a lot of issues with cancer in the family, for them to get faster occurrence is much higher than a person who has no history at all of cancer in the family. You know, again, that's just again part of what you're born with. I mean, that's the luck of the draw. But again, another thing people don't think about is that sugar, you know, carbohydrates, is probably the biggest stressor in your life. Well, because what happens is you know, when you take either banana, for example, if it's unopposed with any type of fat or, you know, or some type of fiber, you know, so it goes in your bloodstream, it spikes your sugar, the adrenaline, you know, you use the insulin up, the sugar drops rapidly. What is this? Oh my God, low blood sugar. It goes, the adrenals go, okay, gotta put out cortisol to go to the liver, to produce glucose, and then you have the stress factor. And that's why people, when they have this lunge, 2 hours later, they kind of very tired and fall asleep because of that drop of, you know, cortisol after that effect. And if you do that 5 times a day, you know, or, you know, you snack, whatever, and then you're running from the tiger, driving the car, having family issues, having job issues, I mean, your adrenals are shot. Right. You know, so they suddenly are no longer able to actually go help you, you know, because you need adrenal function to actually have an immune function. Right. You know, so.
I mentioned I'd like to come back to the issue of vaccines and EMF, but let's click on EMF first. I think a lot of people are in denial, and I would almost include myself in this category for how electromagnetic frequencies negatively affect us. So can you talk us through that? And also, is there any truth to the whole 5G kind of scare that?
I mean, anything that changes, the flow of electrons, through the cells, it will affect their function, So I mean, I'm not necessarily saying it's causing cancer, but again, it's going to affect how the body functions, because any change of, if magnets, people talk about magnets for treating disease factors. People do magnet therapy when they feel a lot better. EMF is very similar to that. You get bombarded by frequencies which will, resonate with different, bonds between atoms, different molecules, will affect downstream how that molecule is going to be used in the body to do some type of process. And if that energetic field is not proper, that process will, will degrade.
Right.
And if you do that many times over, I mean, some people have EMF allergies. They go into they're in a room and they have EMF. They don't function correctly. The brain doesn't function right. And, and then they go to a place where they have those blockers. They are fine. They have no symptoms. So yeah, I think it's, it's real. I mean, again, people, again, it's like genetics again. Some people are more sensitive. I think I'm not, because it doesn't affect me that badly, but I try to avoid it as much as I can. I mean, that's why I use my cell phone. Say it again?
I think you're about to answer my question. What do you recommend people do to mitigate the effect of EMF?
Well, I would definitely not have my cell phone in the bedroom. I would not have a TV in my bedroom. I would not have a Wi-Fi router near my bedroom.
Really? Okay.
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, again, these are easy things to do if you're willing. People are,
So how far, like proximity wise, like how far away are you safe from?
I would say probably. I would safely probably 15 feet minimum.
Interesting. Do walls block the?
Depends on the wall.
Okay.
If you, for example, if you go to a place like you go, I live in Vegas now, and if you go to certain casinos, I mean, the Wi-Fi doesn't work, because of the walls that's so thick. So basically, it blocks. Those walls will protect you from it. But again, you don't want that in your room. If you just turn it off and you go to sleep, turn the phone off, there's nothing coming in, and you're going to sleep a lot better as well. But right now, it's really hard to avoid.
I'm sorry, is putting the phone on airplane mode cutting the EMF off or not?
Well, it's not really, because basically it's still, it's still not gonna focus it though. Right now what happens is when you have the phone is a receiver, because it takes it takes the information in the air and it puts it into one spot. So if you're in a room and the phone is turned on airplane mode, it's not gonna be as focused, but it's still gonna, if you have. It should be okay, but I would take the phone away. I would take the phone out of the room, and I go to bed. My phone is on the kitchen table.
Yeah.
It's
well, you're talking about just the sleep hours. It's those things. I mean, you're bombarded throughout the day, especially in your offices with all the electronic gizmos and gadgets and.
Yeah, I mean that's why that's why you do use FaceTime, or you do so you can actually just have the loudspeaker, so it's not too near your head. And a lot of people put the phone right against, against the chest pocket, and it's right over their heart, and that's going to affect, will affect some of the heart function as well if you have heart issues. Because basically it's going to change. Again, it's going to change, the field of the cell.
Right.
That's a big issue. It's changing the field how the cell energy is conducted. And again, if you have an imbalance of energy conduction, that's disease. Mm-hmm. And some cells are more resistant. Some have better genetics. Some people don't. So. It's a really tough one. I don't see how you can really avoid getting bombarded by Wi-Fi or cell phone, signals.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And 5G is more potent. I don't think I would say I think that the idea was that COVID was part of 5G. I mean, never believed that.
Yeah, I heard that too, and that's kind of that's a little bit far out there, but there is a lot of fear that 5G is causing people to get sick when because there's some evidence of some spikes in illnesses when they roll out 5G in certain cities.
Well, I mean, they have the whole thing about the vaccine having some type of microparticles which will resonate with 5G at a certain frequency to do some damage to the body. I'm not sure. I mean, I said some of those things on Twitter, and I think it's unlikely.
Yeah, I agree with that. Conspiracy theory aside and everything, also with regard to vaccines, what's your take on vaccines in terms of toxicity? And, I know they have some benefit, and there's probably populations, like myself, who didn't really need it. I mean, it's crazy, and I know everyone's got opinions on it in the last 2 years, what's going on with COVID vaccine. But what's your take on, if you got the vaccine, how do you detoxify from it? And what are the risk factors?
Well, for example, in general, the vaccines that are okay to use would be the ones which actually have the pathogens inside, and they just killed it off and re-injected it without any additional.
So with COVID, particles. Wasn't the Johnson & Johnson was that way, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was that way, and that would have been the only one I would have taken.
I took that one just because my clients kind of demanded it. I didn't trust the mRNA.
And that's probably the safest one you could take. Because the problem with messenger RNA is basically it makes you a GMO human being, because it does change your DNA, your genetics. Because you have a foreign protein floating around in your body which can cause many different things. You got autoimmune issues which are coming into play now. You have turbo cancers happening now as well. A lot of different things, and of course, heart issues.
I have a question on this, because I agree with that, and if someone's listening, you want to call me crazy, fine. But I have a number of friends who literally just completely healthy, then suddenly died of a heart attack after the vaccine, and we also have a number of friends who all of a sudden came out with cancer, and they died within like 3 months.
Yeah, I know.
And that's anecdotal evidence, but it's pretty solid evidence to me that there was something going on. And like you said, it's like that mRNA compromised immune systems pretty badly, and all-cause deaths are up over 4%, close to 5%.
Right.
And yet, everyone's ignoring it. The mainstream media is ignoring it. The administration's ignoring it. And it seems like a lot of doctors are ignoring it.
Well,
what's up? What's going on?
boy, that's an interesting question.
Yeah.
I think what's a couple of things. What's by the vaccines, real quick. What I believe is the reason people get the turbo cancer is the reason they have the heart attacks. They have the neurological disease. Issues with nerve function. Again, what happens is the spike protein is inflammatory. Okay, and it has a tendency to travel throughout the body, and it likes to go where you have a lot of fatty tissue. So it's going to go into the brain, it's going to go to the ovary, it's going to go to the testes, and also it's going to go into the blood vessels. And what happens is it can implants in the blood vessels, and the spike is sticking out. And if anything's sticking out in the blood vessels, it can cause clot formation. Mm-hmm. And if you have plenty of those, you can form a big clot, and you can have a problem with that. The second part is because it takes the immune system and hijacks it for a period of 5, 6, 7, 10, 12, 15 weeks to just be focused on making antibodies against the spike protein. Again, so now all that focus is to fight just that one area of the body. So it's going to take the focus away from the immune system to go any other place.
Right.
And if you have any type of cancer cells present in that time frame, which are active, those cells have no problem. They're not going to be surveilled right. They're not going to be addressed, and so they can grow. And if you do that, if you have that 6 months of it, 8 months of that, with all the boosters, of course you're going to have a massive growth of, tumors in that time frame. Just basically, if you look at what it's supposed to do, it's supposed to make antibodies against against COVID. But it will affect other parts, because the machinery is actually now moved away from protecting other parts.
Right.
It's like, if you talk, it's like looking at armed services, right? You got the Navy, you got the Army, and you got the Air Force. They do have certain jobs to do.
Right.
Now you take one of those armed services and you just make them focus on, one thing. Just focus on one part of the world, and be damned what's going on in the other parts of the world. What's going to happen to the planet? You're going to have a lot of unrest. And the same type of things happening in the human body with that kind of process. And the question with getting rid of the spike protein, a couple of things to take a look at is looking at D-dimers, look at how much inflammation is present. If that's a lot of microclots, that number is high. I believe you can take what I call proteinases, like nattokinase, some pancreatic enzymes take those, number one, to break down the protein, the clotting proteins and things like that, and also break down some of the spike protein. That would work. That would work. Secondly, I would also look at, you have to repair function, because basically when you have implantation of inflammation in some organ system, the organ's going to struggle. And that's why you have the idea of long COVID. Basically, the body is just being inflamed too long, and it's damaged tissue.
Right.
And it doesn't have the opportunity to heal, because it's, number one, the system is out of balance. So the idea would be, number one, to address those organs. For example, if you have issues with blood clotting, you would probably give something to help bone marrow functions. If you have something like which affects brain function or nerve function, you do something to support the nerves. And so that's where stem cells would come in. Because basically those stem cells will be able to support those cells and let them go back to normal again.
Right.
So that's how I would approach it. It's right, basically that's part of, we need to get rid of the offender, which is the spike protein.
Right.
And then,
do you do this type of work at your clinics?
I'm mostly doing cancer, because that's, what I'm known for. But I've treated a few people with long COVID, and they've done pretty well with that. Again, just basically, again, talking about the system, work on systems, make sure the systems are functioning and supporting them. And they've done, some have done really well, some have done not so well. And again, the ones who have not done so well usually are not compliant.
Right.
And I mean, it's amazing how much compliance is an issue with patients.
Yeah, you got to be a willing participant in your own recovery. That's for sure.
Correct. And you need to, you also need to be single-minded to, do the work. It is, it's a fight for your life. Basically, you are fighting for your life. Right. And if you're not willing to do anything to stay alive, you probably won't.
Yeah. What role does intravenous vitamins, play in your recovery for immunotherapy?
Well, I think they do. And again, what they do is they don't have to be absorbed. The problem a lot of people have, they are not absorbing properly. The digestive system is compromised. So if you do an IV, you can actually step over that compromised situation and get it right where it needs to go. So that's why it's very beneficial. High dose vitamin C is very strongly anti-cancer. But you got to go really, really high. You got to go to 85, 100 grams per IV, and you got to do it a lot. And it's a natural chemotherapy agent. So, but you have to do a lot of the treatment. Again, you need to also do other things as well. You need to get rid of the cause too. That's part of it too. And, but again, vitamin C by itself will not really necessarily activate the immune system. It's just gonna attack some cancer cells, but it will not activate the immune system per se. That's why we do the cell therapies. That's why we use the T cells, natural killer cells, and T cells, killer cells, and dendritic cells. Use those cells to jumpstart the immune system, get it focused.
And is the T cells and all that? I forget the name of that type of therapy is escaping me right now. But is that all legal now in the United States?
Well, it's not legal. That's why we do it in Mexico. It's legal for some of the cells are legal. I mean, you have CAR T, which is very similar, but it's has a lot of side effects. Which we don't, because we do with our cells, they get naturally activated, and we don't actually force to activate like you do CAR T. You actually force to activate the cells to do a certain thing. And so that's why they have more side effects. And so, it's everything we try to do is we try to use the body's own ability to heal itself. And just give it assistance. And when we we take the cells, increase the number, we inject them, it's your cells coming back. So basically, we're just assisting your own tissue to fight the disease, fight the cancer. And
it has to be your T cells. You can't.
I don't like. You cannot do stem cells in cancer patients. You can't do it because, I believe the environment plays a huge role. The environment controls what cells do. And if you take stem cells, there are cells which are able to have to be told what to do, right? And if the environment tells, like epigenetics, you know what that is, right?
Yeah.
It's basically
turning the gene expression on or off. Right.
And so when you inject stem cells into a toxic environment, they will not do the thing what they're supposed to be doing.
Interesting.
And that's why I don't use stem cells in cancer patients. I may use animal stem cells in cancer patients, but not human stem cells.
Interesting.
Because basically those cells will not be, they will not, they're not going to be changed by the human environment because they come from a different environment totally. So it's different. Yeah, I was going to say something else, but I forgot.
Well, that'll come back to you. I wanted to come back to vitamins. For those who are healthy, because most of the people who've listened to my show are peak performers and are pretty healthy, but they want to be like, okay, let me avoid at all costs cancer. Supplementation is very interesting to people, but it's confusing, right? So what are and I recognize that we're not getting the nutrition that we used to get from our food. So like I am a proponent of supplementation, but what should we be thinking about in terms of cancer, like and immune system strength? Vitamin C, you mentioned already.
The big ones are vitamin C, zinc is very important. Vitamin D3, vitamin K. Some of the IP6 is a good product to take.
What is that? IP6.
Basically, it's a compound. It's called IP6. It comes from mushrooms too. It's just it's a breakdown material for mushrooms. Basically, take mushrooms. I think it's Coriolis mushroom. They just take it to the laboratory and just take IP6 out and then give it as a supplement.
Interesting.
I prefer whole mushrooms if you can use those. They're better. The big thing is reduce your toxic load. Do everything you can do to help your liver function properly. Make sure you have good vitamin. B complex is important. Things like that. Hydration, like I said before, is very important. Diet, of course, is very important because most of the food, most of the nutrition you should get from your diet anyway. And the supplement should just be adding to be supportive.
That's why we call it a supplement. It's to supplement your diet, not to replace it. Right?
Yeah, you kind of that's important. Important to know. Even if you're healthy, there are some things which you might be lacking. But you need to know what they are. You don't want to just go. Zinc is always good. Vitamin C is good. Vitamin K is important. And these are important things. But then other components which you may not need. Right. And it's need to know if you need those or not, because you don't want to overdose things either, because they're minerals can do bad things. So, for example, too much calcium is bad news. And too much calcium can be toxic. If you think about this, you look at any type of cancer on the scan, they have microcalcifications visible. That's why you see breast cancer on a mammogram. So there's too much calcium there.
Interesting.
So again, you don't want to overload the system, and so you need to know exactly. You have this, the staples, which we just talked about. Vitamin C, the zinc, but vitamin D3, vitamin K, and then you need the other things. You kind of have to see what you need. What you need. Are those something which are necessary? Right. And it may not be necessary. You might get everything from your diet you need, but you need to know. You need to actually assess that by how does the person feel? Are they pretty energetic? Are they? How do they sleep? How are their bowel movements? And things like that. Right. Yeah.
I'm bullish because of now that we have genetics testing and artificial intelligence coming online. So there's companies like Tony Robbins' Life Force. Peter Duggan is Tony Robbins behind Life Force, and also Wild Health. So I actually signed up for Wild Health. And they do a genetics test, and then they do obviously a blood panel, and they do your whole intake, and they do a biome check, and then they come back and say, okay, here's what you're missing from a supplementation standpoint. Here's some risk factors based upon your genetics, and then they test you every quarter, and they'll recommend some diet, exercise. It's fairly comprehensive and somewhat personalized. Right. So I think that's a huge leap forward, and it costs a little bit of money, so it's not accessible to everybody. It's not too bad. I think it's like $300 a month, but that's on top of health insurance and everything. A lot of people wouldn't be able to afford that. But anyway,
if you look in general, when you have patients come in who see functional doctors, the amount of supplements they are taking is amazing. The money they spend on supplements per month, it's $500 or more. You know,
crazy.
and a lot of the supplements may or may not be necessary.
Right.
You know, because a lot of those things there, it's what I call green allopathy.
Yeah.
You know, basically using natural products to do the same thing you did before with normal medicines, like just bridging symptoms instead of looking why is that present, why is that occurring right now. And a lot of times that's what I think. That's why functional medicine, in some cases, I call it almost like green allopathy, because they're using supplements to do the same thing they did before with medicines.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, because they have the vitamins or the herbs or whatever, they are not going to be as toxic, which is true, but it's still not addressing. I mean, if you have to be on supplements which are $500 a month the rest of your life, I mean you're not solving the problem. I mean, you know, the body's not going back to normal function. Otherwise, they would be off those supplements.
Right.
You know, so it doesn't fix the issue. So the goal as a physician is, in my understanding, is basically get the body back into functionality, and then you be done needing the stuff. You know, and you know if you still need certain things, it should be a few things. Should not be, 20 different items per day. You know, like take 5 this morning, and then 20 in the afternoon, and 30 at night. You know, again, that's not really. I don't
it's like the biohackers and the longevity, craze. Like some people that I know in that kind of field are taking like hundreds supplements a day.
Oh, I know, and the way I look at it is, okay, you have X amount of transporters in your gut, right?
Right.
You know, and it's like a freeway, right? You have so many exits. And after you have the exits at capacity, whatever it goes, if it's still out there, it's going to go right past that exit,
right,
and go out, where it goes,
right.
So so you need to know how much can your body really absorb, and then not overtreat. I mean, overtreating is no treatment at all. Yeah.
Less is more. Just take the right things. That's another reason why I think it's important to have an expert like you, or like this, for me it was Wild Health, say, because when they came back, they only recommended like 2 different supplements. And they, of course, they have their company that they partner with and everything. But I was surprised, because I thought they were going to try to sell me on a bunch of stuff, and they're like, you don't need it. You're pretty healthy across all these things, but you could use a little bit of more of this. And one of them was just fish oil, right? Which I thought was pretty reasonable. And the other was something like thiome. I forget what it was. Anyways, so less is more there. I agree with that. This is fascinating. So is there anything we haven't covered in terms of immunotherapy, strengthening the immune system? I mean, we've talked a lot of lifestyle factors.
I think there's a confusion with there are more than one type of immunotherapy out there. I mean, there are immunotherapies which are like using things like Keytruda, where they actually use chemicals to activate the immune system wholesale without focus, and it's like a shotgun approach, and you just shoot it out and you hope it hits the right target. And that's the ones which will actually cause autoimmune disease. And then there's the the immunotherapy, which is non-toxic, which we use, which actually is focused. So basically, it takes the antigens which are in your bloodstream of the cancer, and you activate this immune system to go to their job to address it. So that's the difference, and that's that's why I like it, because it's, number one, it's using your own tissue, your own body to fight the disease problem. You're just assisting it by activating it. And then, of course, like I said, you have to address the underlying cause as well.
Right.
So
your clinic, is it called the Issels Clinic, or what's it called?
Well, it's called the Issels. Yeah, it's actually Issels Treatment. That's what it is. We have a clinic in Mexico, and they do our protocol. It's a 12-day program where we actually take, the patient comes in, we do a workup, do a blood draw. The second day we fit the cells, and while they wait for the cells to be grown out, we use IV therapies like vitamin C, creatine, glutathione, things like that to build up, support the bone marrow. Do some ozone, do some Laetrile for the next 9 days, and then day 11 and day 12 you get the cells back injected into you, and then you go home. And then after that we do what I call the workup of the underlying cause. Because because in cancer it's important not to waste time, because we don't want this this to grow. That's why you want to be knocking it out right away aggressively as soon as you can, and then address the reason why it developed, because that's going to take some time. You know, for example, if it's a viral infection, it's going to take at least a couple months to get rid of the virus. If it's related to some kind of toxicity level, you know, in the tissues, it's going to take a while to detoxify that safely, because you don't want to have the body go into detox reaction. Like in the talk, Hertzheimer reactions, you know what that is? Hertzheimer reaction, no. I'm sure you've heard that. Basically, when people have they take a medication and they have like a really bad like get the shakes or fever, things like that, they're hertzing, and that means it's an over treatment.
Interesting.
So basically, you put the body into stress, and you know, in my medical school, when they said when you have Hertzheimer reaction, people are either at the point where they're gonna recover, or you're gonna go to the other side and pass away, because basically it gives the body the chance to, in a sense, to make a decision. I want to stay, I want to go, and you never want to put the body into that position. So that's why I'm really much, I don't like hurting patients out. That's why you don't want to treat. Right. And so that's a really important part. So you want to make sure you take care of, support the patient through, and you don't have an over treatment and people overreact to treatments, and you don't want to do that. So
what's your success rate? How do you track that? The success rate at your clinic?
Again, depending on the case, it's if I stage 1, I would say 100% almost. Nothing's 100%, of course, but I'm close to that. Stage 4, depending on what organism involved, I think you probably do it 25% or better.
That's good.
But that's stage 4, and nothing. Again, it depends on, is the patient compliant? And they can continue the protocol when you get home. It's not just it's basically it's a journey, and if you are traveling on the journey, you need to travel and everything like that. So, that's important. Again, that's why I said before that they won't have a one-shot cure for cancer because it's too complex. Right. Because I can have the same diagnosis, 8 patients, 9 patients, and each one of us can be different. Right. And they will respond to the cell therapy, but then the other part of the equation is the underlying causes. If I don't get to those, then whatever the first therapy, it's not going to work long term. Right. And you're looking at, if you look at most studies, when they talk about survival, they're talking 10, 12, 13 months. That's in a sense, if you have a diagnosis and you live, you do chemotherapy and you live 12 additional months, that's a success for the therapy. Wow. Because they give you 12 months, which in a sense, that's good, but 12 months is not a lot of time. And then the quality of life is terrible too, which in our case, we have people have a great quality of life because there's no side effects. I was going to say something additional. What was I going to say?
Your dog's interrupted your train of thought.
Yeah, I know. Somebody must be at the door. I know. Sorry about the dogs. Well, I got 3 dogs.
We can wrap up now. So, where can people find information online about your?
It's Issels.com. So it's ISSELS.com.
Okay.
And
awesome.
I'm also on Twitter. It's DRBigDRISSELS. Big ISSISSELS, and that's on Twitter, so you can find me there. Sorry about the dogs.
No worries. No, it's happens. My dog is laying on the floor right here, but she's nice and quiet today.
I think somebody knocked at the door. I think.
All right. Well, I'll let you go check that out and to take care of the dogs. Thank you so much for your time today, Dr. Issels.
Not a problem.
Been fascinating, and we'll put that information up on the website too. And
great.
And appreciate you. Keep doing what you're doing.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.